So a Republican accidentally made an awesome argument for government health care. I love moments like this. There's this new Twitter account that I like, and it's called Accidentally Left Wing, where somebody says something and they don't understand that they're actually really making a good point for the left. Anyway, so Lee Fong says, former Senator Phil Gramm, in a Wall Street Journal column, denouncing Biden makes an unintentionally convincing case on healthcare. So here's what it said in the Wall Street Journal. On healthcare, Mr. Biden bought Mr. Sanders' Medicare for All scheme. Yeah, I wish. Though on an installment plan, first healthcare becomes a right where no one pays more than 8.5% of their income. Mr. Biden's planned public option is heavily subsidized with no deductibles and low co-payments. Like current Medicare, this Medicare option would further inflate the cost of private plans by making them pay more to compensate for government's underpayment to hospitals and doctors. The inevitable result would be that the Medicare option would quickly compete private plans out of business. That's amazing. So he's saying, well, listen, if we're going to have competition and we're going to have a government option, obviously the government option is going to win. Obviously it's going to be lower cost and better quality. Obviously the private plans are going to go away eventually because they can't compete with the government option. That is the most accidentally left-wing stuff I've ever heard in my life. Obviously, if you have government healthcare, it's going to be awesome and it's going to take over. Duh. And by the way, this is just like he's just talking about a public option here. And what he's saying is eventually you'll so thoroughly destroy the private plans that there will only be the public option. And at that point, is it really even a public option? It's just Medicare for all. To which I say, rock on, bro. Listen, I've never been a fan of Joe Biden's healthcare plan, primarily because it leaves millions of people uninsured. I forget the exact number. I want to say like 7 million. I used to know this number off the top of my head. Somewhere between like 3 and 7 million people are left uninsured by Biden's healthcare plan. So go, by the way, fact check me on that. I forget exactly what the number is. Because he does the, you know, he says like 90 some odd percent of the country is covered under my plan. Okay, if it's not 100%, it's a trash plan. But former Republican Senator Phil Gramm, he really did accidentally make Biden's healthcare plan look awesome. He's saying like, oh, really what this is a multi-stepped process to get to Medicare for all. By the way, that's not what it is. This is not what Biden has in mind. Biden is a hardcore opponent of Medicare for all. I wish he was a supporter. He's not. But this is the best argument I've ever heard. Like after I read that passage, I walked away going, maybe Biden's healthcare plan isn't as bad as I thought it was. Listen, the fact of the matter is this. On the actual merits, there's not a single leg to stand on for the Republicans in the healthcare debate. Now, that's not me saying there are no issues where the right doesn't have a point or some semblance of a point. No, I think there are plenty of areas where there's ambiguity, things are up in the air. There's been decent points made on the right on a variety of different issues. But healthcare, guys, I'm sorry. It is just not one of them. Their points are absurd. And all I need to make my case is every single empirical study ever done on healthcare systems the world over. Every single one. The Commonwealth Fund studies this all the time, like every few years. They ranked 11 recently, 11 of the most developed countries' healthcare systems. The United States ranked 11th out of 11. And the criteria, you can go and read it if you want, but the criteria is the way that you should do such a study. You know, outcomes, cost, everything. Like everything that you think should be the criteria, that is the criteria in the Commonwealth Fund study, and the U.S. ranked 11th out of 11. There's the old World Health Organization study, which had us ranked 37th in the world. Okay, now that one is really old. It's like from the year 2000. So it's fair to dismiss that at this point because it's so old that our system has changed so much since then. But still, every time it's studied, every study comes back saying the exact same thing. So what do you have? You have a situation where it's not an open question. It's been proven. The best systems in the world are the universal healthcare systems of other developed countries. France, in some studies, is number one. Okay? The UK in some studies is number one. But you're talking about different versions of a single payer system everywhere you go. Sometimes it's public funding of public institutions. Sometimes it's public funding of private institutions. But the connecting tissue is public funding. Public funding. So what we're talking about here in the US to fix our system is get rid of the private tax that you have to pay. Your premium, your co-payment, your deductible. All this money that you give to these private health insurance companies that are for profit. I'm going to eliminate your private tax, and I'm going to raise your public tax, but you're still going to be paying less taxes overall because your public tax increase is going to be less than the elimination of your private tax. You understand? So, in other words, under a Medicare for All system, you pay less, you get full coverage, and the health outcomes are better. Everybody's covered. Can you imagine? Look at this deal that you're being offered. And again, all I'm saying is look at the rest of the world. This is how they do it. And they're better than us, according to every study. All we're saying is, hey, I want you to pay less and then get everything covered and have better health outcomes. There's literally no counter-argument to that, which is why the University of Massachusetts Amherst did a study, and they found that Medicare for All saves trillions of dollars over a decade. I believe it was $5 trillion over a decade. Trillions. Because when you get rid of the mafia middleman who's price gouging you and robbing you, you tend to save money. You do. So listen, the answer is Medicare for All. But there is a very rigid hierarchy in terms of, what kind of systems are better. At the very bottom is our wild, wild west for-profit health insurance system. It's a mess, okay? One step above that is Obamacare, forcing everybody to buy on the private market. The reason why Obamacare is better than the original system is simply because of the other regulations that are part of it, like the protections for pre-existing conditions, like, the rule that 80% of health insurance company money needs to go to actual care. Okay, that's a really important rule. You can stay on your parents' health insurance until you're 26. That's why Obamacare was a step in the right direction. A step beyond Obamacare would be a public option. And then obviously the holy grail is a Medicare for All system, and you could argue over which version of Medicare for All system is preferable. But single payer, okay? But I find it funny when Republicans accidentally prove that the left is right about stuff. Because, see, in his mind, he has what we're going to call a status quo bias. That's what it is, a status quo bias. So his argument is like, any system that would compete out of existence private plans is a bad system. That's his assumption. That's his starting point. But, he just doesn't realize how absurd that is on its face. That the current system isn't simply preferable because it's the current system. That's not an argument. It's not an argument that, change is by definition bad. No, the details are all that matters. So it's funny to see, and this is the mind of a conservative, right? The mind of a conservative, there's some definitions of conservatism, which basically mean, I want things to function roughly as they function now. I don't want too much change. But the bias is so strong, he doesn't understand how ridiculous he looks making this point. And I'm extremely here for that.